Hello, friends. The 1,066 days of the war between Russia and Ukraine continues. The Russians claim that they have entered the center of Velyka Novosilka in the Donetsk region. They publish videos of their assault groups advancing there and the installation of the Russian flag over one of the houses. Judging by the map of the Ukrainian military telegram channel, Deep State, the Russians have indeed entrenched themselves in the center of the village. Also in the gray zone are the northwestern outskirts of the village, through which Velyka Novosilka was supplied. Let me remind you that yesterday the military of the Ukrainian armed forces reported that the southern part of the village was cut off from the northern one. Now let's move on to today's statements by the Ukrainian military and experts about the situation in the village. The Ukrainian military telegram channel Deep State writes that the enemy is starting to publish footage from Velyka Novosilka, simultaneously manipulating the fact that they allegedly took control of the entire village, but this is true at the moment. The Russians are succeeding in advancing in the eastern outskirts, and have also occupied a small part of the central streets of the village, where they filmed their videos with flags. It is also trying to put pressure from the south and from Serhiivka, using a huge number of resources, in particular infantry and equipment. At the same time, the situation around the village is difficult, and it can be stated that the battle for Velyka Novosilka is coming to an end, writes Deep State. Ukrainian military expert Miroshnikov writes that I will not provide information on Velyka Novosilka because there is not much to say there. When you have several units squeezed from all sides on an area of several square kilometers and surrounded on three sides, nothing good can be expected. My subjective opinion is that after the loss of Serhiivka, it was necessary to post a rear guard near the village, cover the dirt roads and retreat from the entire defense area. Partly, this was achieved. Partly no. The onslaught of the Russians was too strong for the available forces to do the above. The fighting in this defense area is still ongoing. The situation is now critical, it's hell there, writes Miroshnikov. Ukrainian fighter Muchnoy writes that there are no more areas in Velyka Novosilka where our guys control anything. Now the village is a solid gray zone, in which our troops are still resisting. Most of our soldiers did not want to listen to hostile calls to surrender and intend to continue fighting. Now the enemy is crawling out of every crack, so the situation is very difficult. Let's not forget those who are there now. This is a war, and everyone must understand that not everyone will come out, but everyone will fight to the last. At present, the enemy completely controls the center of the village. Its rags are installed. Enemy drones and snipers are working closely, writes Muchnoy. Meanwhile, the Russians have advanced in other areas of the front, Deep State reports. In particular, in several places between Pokrovsk and Kurakhove. Near Pokrovsk, they advanced in the area of Udachny, further reducing the distance to the borders of the Dnipropetrovsk region. The fighter Muchnoy writes that the Russians are bypassing Udachny from the south and are now approximately 4 kilometers from the borders of the Dnipropetrovsk region. Also, according to him, after the enemy occupied an agricultural farm in the Kotlyne area, the Russians began to rapidly develop an offensive along the landings towards the Pavlohrad-Pokrovsk highway. Movement along the highway is becoming very dangerous due to FPV drones, our fighter reports. An officer of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, with the call sign Alex, also writes about this. According to him, enemy FPV drones are already actively flying over Serhiivka, and accordingly along the entire section of the highway up to Pokrovsk itself. If the Russians' tendency to advance towards the administrative border of the Donetsk region continues, this will create big problems, including logistical ones, Alex writes. Ukrainian military expert Miroshnikov reports that the enemy has cut off the Pokrovsk-Kostiantynivka highway near the junction north of Vozdvyzhenka. According to him, the defense forces are carrying out stabilization measures and are not allowing the enemy to gain a foothold. But, unfortunately, the enemy continues to accumulate forces in Vozdvyzhenka and has captured Baranivka by almost 90%, thereby actively securing its flanks. This is the second significant highway from which the Pokrovsk agglomeration was cut off. There are still two more or less normal roads to Pokrovsk, but the key Pavlohrad highway is less than 5 kilometers from the line of combat engagement. FPV drones fly there and actively hunt for our equipment and transport. Another highway is Dobrapilya. So far it is relatively safe, but single FPV drones are already flying there. So everything is developing very, very sadly, writes Miroshnikov. By the way, in order to make it difficult for the enemy to advance to the Pokrovsk-Kostiantynivka highway area, our soldiers blew up the overpass at the junction, reports the fighter Muchnoy. According to him, this will slow down the enemy a little and buy us time. Friends, I understand that the duration of events is becoming less relevant for you, but for me, the situation is only getting worse. Those who have been with me for a long time know that preparing reports on this channel has become my main job, and I have no other job for obvious reasons. Lately, the channel has had few views, so I ask for your help. If you have the opportunity to support me with a cup of coffee, I will be very grateful. Thank you very much for understanding and see you in the next video.